The bright lights of the America's Got Talent stage had a way of intimidating even the strongest performers, and for a young Filipino boy standing alone at center stage, they felt almost overwhelming. His name was Miguel Santos, just 11 years old, born and raised in a small coastal town in the Philippines where electricity sometimes went out at night and dreams felt far away. He stood there clutching the microphone with both hands, his fingers shaking slightly, not because he didn't believe in himself, but because he knew exactly what this moment meant. This was not just a performance. This was a message. This was his country's voice traveling across the ocean. Miguel had never planned to audition for America's Got Talent. In fact, the idea seemed impossible. His father was a fisherman who left home before sunrise and returned after sunset, often with empty nets. His mother worked at a small local market selling dried fish and vegetables. Music, for Miguel, was not a luxury or a hobby. It was comfort. He learned to sing not from teachers or coaches, but from old radios playing patriotic songs, from school assemblies, and from listening to elders talk about sacrifice, history, and pride. When Miguel was 7 years old, a typhoon struck his village with brutal force. Their house lost its roof, his school was destroyed, and for weeks his family lived in an evacuation center. One night, as rain hammered the tin walls and fear filled the air, Miguel began singing Lupang Hinirang, the Philippine national anthem. He didn't know why he chose that song. Maybe because it reminded people of strength. Maybe because it reminded them of home. As his small voice echoed through the shelter, people began to cry, not from sadness, but from hope. That was the first time Miguel realized that his voice could carry more than sound. It could carry emotion. Years later, a volunteer teacher who heard Miguel sing encouraged him to record a simple video on an old phone. The video showed Miguel standing barefoot on a dirt road, singing Lupang Hinirang with a sincerity that could not be taught. That video traveled farther than anyone expected. It was shared, reposted, and eventually reached someone connected to the AGT auditions. An invitation arrived, and Miguel's family stared at it in disbelief. America felt like another planet. Getting to the United States was not easy. The family had no savings. Neighbors collected small donations. A local charity helped with paperwork. Miguel's father sold his fishing boat, the only thing he owned of value. When Miguel found out, he cried and begged his father not to do it. His father simply said that boats can be replaced, but chances like this cannot. That sacrifice became the weight Miguel carried with him onto that stage. Backstage at AGT, surrounded by dancers, magicians, and singers with glittering costumes, Miguel looked out of place. He wore a simple white shirt, dark pants, and shoes borrowed from a cousin. A producer asked him what he planned to sing. When Miguel said Lupang Hinirang, the producer paused. The Philippine national anthem was unfamiliar to most Americans. It wasn't a pop song. It wasn't trendy. It wasn't safe. But Miguel insisted. He said this song was his heart. When Miguel walked onto the stage, polite applause followed. Simon Cowell leaned back in his chair, arms crossed, face unreadable. He had seen thousands of kids. Heidi smiled kindly. Howie nodded encouragingly. Sophia leaned forward, curious. Simon asked Miguel his name and where he was from. Miguel answered softly, his accent thick but his eyes steady. Simon asked why he chose this song. Miguel took a breath and said that this song represents his people, his parents, and everyone who never gets a chance to be heard. The music began. With no instruments, just silence. Miguel sang the opening line slowly, clearly, every word filled with meaning. The audience didn't understand the language, but they understood the emotion. His voice was not loud, but it was pure. As he continued, something changed in the room. The murmurs stopped. Cameras caught audience members leaning forward, some with hands over their mouths. Halfway through the song, Miguel's voice cracked. For a brief second, it seemed like nerves had finally taken over. Simon raised his eyebrows slightly. But then Miguel closed his eyes, steadied himself, and continued. That moment of imperfection made everything real. This was not a rehearsed act. This was a child carrying the weight of a nation on his voice. As the song reached its climax, Miguel's voice soared. There was power, pride, and pain all at once. The audience rose to their feet before the final note ended. When the song finished, there was silence for one long second, followed by thunderous applause. People were crying openly. Heidi wiped tears from her eyes. Howie stood up immediately. Sophia covered her mouth in shock. Then the camera cut to Simon Cowell. Simon was not clapping. He was staring at Miguel, his jaw tight, eyes glossy. For years, Simon had built a reputation as the unbreakable judge, the man who criticized dreams without hesitation. But something about this performance pierced through that armor. Later, Simon would say that he didn't need to understand the words to understand the truth. Simon finally stood up. The audience erupted again. When the noise died down, Simon spoke slowly. He said he had heard many national anthems, many emotional performances, but this one felt different. He said that Miguel reminded everyone why music exists in the first place. Then Simon paused, his voice wavering, and admitted that he felt emotional because he saw a child who wasn't trying to be famous, but was trying to be heard. That was the first twist. Nobody expected Simon Cowell to admit vulnerability on live television. But the biggest twist was yet to come. Simon asked Miguel to wait. He stood up, walked across the stage, and pressed the golden buzzer. Gold confetti exploded from above, covering Miguel in a storm of light. Miguel froze, unable to process what was happening. His hands shook, his knees buckled, and he fell to the stage, crying uncontrollably. His parents screamed backstage, hugging each other as tears streamed down their faces. The golden buzzer meant Miguel was going straight to the live shows. Overnight, his story spread across America and the Philippines. News outlets replayed the performance. Social media exploded. Celebrities shared the clip. People who had never heard Lupang Hinirang searched for its meaning. But fame did not make things easier. During the live shows, Miguel faced criticism. Some people online said a national anthem didn't belong in a competition. Others accused the show of using patriotism for emotion. Miguel read those comments and felt doubt for the first time. He called his father, apologizing for the boat, for the sacrifice, for the pressure. His father told him that storms always come before calm seas. In the semi-finals, Miguel chose a different song, a Filipino folk piece rearranged with English verses. His voice had matured, but the pressure was intense. This time, the judges praised his growth, but Simon warned him that the final would be the hardest test of his life. On finale night, Miguel walked onto the stage carrying a small Philippine flag tucked into his pocket. He sang Lupang Hinirang again, but this time blended with a powerful English message about freedom, unity, and hope. The arrangement was risky. Mixing cultures, mixing languages, mixing tradition with innovation. The audience listened in stunned silence. When Miguel finished, the applause was deafening. Judges stood once more. Simon looked directly at Miguel and said that this performance was not about winning a show, but about reminding the world that talent has no borders. Miguel did not win first place. He placed second. That was the final twist. But losing the title did not mean losing the moment. Miguel received scholarship offers, recording opportunities, and invitations to sing at international events. Most importantly, his father bought back his fishing boat with the help of supporters who believed in Miguel's story. Years later, Miguel would say that standing on that stage taught him something more important than fame. It taught him that even the smallest voice can travel across oceans, break the hardest hearts, and remind the world of its shared humanity. And somewhere in the audience that night, Simon Cowell learned that even after decades in music, there are still performances that can surprise you, humble you, and make you feel again.